Evening. Welcome to our special broadcast focusing on Phoenix pay system under fire. New numbers released today show the government is slowly cutting down the backlog of affected workers.
But there is a new Phoenix forecast tonight. It will be months before the pay system returns to normal. We will have stories on the other day's news, but we start with Phoenix.
Today is payday in the federal government. New information on the pay backlog from 80,000 original cases. That number is down to 10,000 today. To help fix the problems, the government has processed 100,000 transactions.
We have invited federal workers into our studio tonight to share their stories of crisis. We also have experts with advice to help affected workers handle the stress or dig out of a financial hole caused by Phoenix. We will also put questions directly to the Minister of Public Works, Judy Foote, and public servants can ask the Deputy Minister questions that we hope to have answers.
And let's start now with the latest update on Phoenix. CTV's Catherine Latham has this for us.
Well, as you said, today was government payday, but for some, it was just another letdown. Bills are piling up, and Christmas won't be easy.
Hi, what can I get for you today?
A federal public servant for 10 years.
Okay, so cheese malt lattes.
It was Suzanne Baptiste's dream job.
For the benefits, for the pension, for security.
And here you are.
And in September, she received a promotion, more money.
You can log in on a Monday morning to see what your pay is going to be. So I was pretty excited, and then I noticed that there was no pay stub. So I went to my managers and tried to figure out what was going on.
She was told a human error was to blame. In the Phoenix pay system, her promotion was mistakenly entered as a leave of absence. Now, 4 months later, the mother of 3 is yet to receive a regular paycheck.
A lot of stress. I had to go out and get a second job, so I'm working part-time as well. My husband's had to pull in more hours at his work to help the family. We have bills to pay.
We absolutely acknowledge that this is not a situation that is one that is acceptable.
Deputy Minister Marie LeMay updating the Phoenix fiasco.
There are just over 10,000 employees with cases remaining in the backlog.
Add to that the anticipated 80,000 new, less complex day-to-day cases, and LeMay says it's expected to take 2.5 months to get back on track.
I mean, this system at the end of the day, once we're through it, is going to be better for the employees, it's going to be better for the taxpayer because we will end up saving some money.
For the 14,000 overpaid employees, LeMay says those funds won't be reflected on T4s at tax time. For any overpayment identified in the new year, an amended T4 will be issued. And for employees underpaid, T4s will only reflect what was paid out. It will mean your 2017 T4 will include any missed pay from this year. As for Suzanne Baptiste, today was payday.
Did you get paid today?
No, I didn't.
There's a pay stub there.
She has received some emergency pays, hundreds of dollars less than what she's owed. She's fed up.
In my case, it needs to be resolved, or, I know people that are losing their homes and stuff, and they're hopeful that the next pay between Christmas and New Year's, that it should be resolved. Again, I'm not holding my breath, to be honest with you, until I see the deposit in my bank account.
Now, charities are also being impacted. In an open letter, 25 agencies say they fear the government workplace campaign is at risk of falling short. They say that will have a huge impact on the community. Now, this Phoenix disaster was expected to take $50 million to fix it, but now that number is climbing and expected to be much higher. Graham has more in the social room.
Thanks, Kathy. We're going to take a closer look at how we got here and what it has to do with the long gun registry. There is a connection. Remember when the Conservatives came to office, they promised to scrap the registry. The problem with that, a lot of the jobs, hundreds of them, were actually in Miramichi related to the gun registry. So there's a lot of concern about regional jobs. This is a big thing in a place like Miramichi where unemployment is very, very high. Part of the solution from Mr. Harper at the time was to move payroll jobs from here to New Brunswick. Here he is making that announcement back in 2010 in Miramichi.
Our government will consolidate its national payroll functions here in Miramichi. This means that over the next few years, 550 new permanent federal public service jobs will be created.
So a standing ovation for Mr. Harper in New Brunswick, but it's just not that simple. The promise at the time, a big one for New Brunswickers, 550 payroll jobs moved from here to New Brunswick, and for taxpayers, a savings of $80 million because there are fewer payroll advisors than were on the books at the time. Of course, much more complicated than that, and as we heard today, the $80 million in savings didn't happen. In fact, they've had to reopen payroll centers here. The cost is north of $50 million. The mess still hasn't been sorted out. Patricia.
All right, thank you, Graham. Our CTV quick poll tonight, we want to know, are you confident that public service workers affected by Phoenix problems will one day receive the money owed to them? Cast your vote on our website at ottawa.ctvnews.ca. All of our coverage on Phoenix, including the latest detail, is on our website. Visit us online at ottawa.ctvnews.ca. And are you a federal worker affected by the Phoenix pay system? Do you have a question for Minister Judy Foote or Deputy Minister Marie Lemay? Or perhaps you have a question about how to handle your finances? Email us at ottawanews@ctv.ca or message us on our CTV Ottawa Facebook page. We will try to have those questions answered during our broadcast. We'll have much more on the Phoenix problems just ahead in the newscast. As we mentioned, Deputy Minister Marie Lemay will join us. Also, the top 5 financial recommendations with respect to Phoenix irregularities and a question and answer segment with our experts.
We didn't realize the complexity of the cases.
I'm using savings, and what about if my savings run out? What do I do?
We owe so much to so many people.
There seems to be no end to it.
Judy Foote is the Minister of Public Works and joins us now. Minister, this is, to put it mildly, a disgrace for the country. Our viewers, a lot of them are public service workers, been there for decades, and they can't get paid. And it's been going on for months. People are losing their houses in some cases, extreme cases, I know. What do you say to them tonight?
It's heartbreaking for me as well that we have not been able to solve these issues much faster than we are doing. We had 82,000 in a backlog. We're now down to 10, but anyone going without pay for work performed is totally unacceptable.
But that
and
10,
we are working so hard to try and resolve these issues.
That 10,000 doesn't capture everyone. That 10,000 are the original cases, right? And this is affecting many, many more because people who have been promoted, they're not even touching their system if they're getting pay because they don't want to mess with it. So when is it going to be fixed? It seems like such a simple problem that our people aren't being paid, and they're not.
If it was that simple, Graham, we would have it fixed. Regrettably, the system we inherited, there were 700 compensation advisors who were let go. I'm confident if that had not been the case by the previous government, we would not be in the situation we're in today.
Why didn't you slow it down then?
Well,
Why
because
didn't
at the
you roll it
time,
out on one ministry like Natural Resources and beta test it? Did you do that?
We were told that we were ready to go, that all systems were ready to go, the questions were asked. So now what we're dealing with, we have to find a way to fix it. And we have put extra resources into that. We've hired additional people. We've opened additional centers. We're doing everything we can to fix this as quickly as we can because it is totally unacceptable.
Normal by February, and some people's credit ratings have been destroyed. Like, it's shocking to a lot of people.
Graham, I cannot disagree with you. This I'm finding really unacceptable, and I know the impact it's having on some individuals, and it is totally heartbreaking, and the repercussions for them are totally unacceptable. The reality is that we now have a payroll system. We have to fix it, and it is mine to fix. It's one that we inherited, but it's mine to fix, and we will do it. Today,
I got a tweet. Senior officers in the Coast Guard are threatening to walk off the ships. I don't know how you do that, but the Phoenix system won't recognize their hourly rates. The same problem exists that existed in February. They are calling, and they are not getting called back, in some cases for 4 weeks. In the private sector, people get fired. I'm not suggesting you go around firing everybody because it's 300,000 people. You want them to still get paid. But at what point do you say, this is a huge problem of accountability for the new government because you didn't delay it coming in?
It is a huge problem. It's one that we're dealing with. And we have a complicated payroll system. We deal with 80,000 different rules and regulations because of all of the union agreements. But the reality is put that aside, we have employees who are going without pay, and we need to make sure they get paid. And that's why we're putting additional money into this. We're not recognizing the savings that Mr. Harper wanted to recognize as a result of bringing in this
Nobody
system.
cares about Mr. Harper anymore, Minister. Nobody, and I don't mean to be rude, but nobody cares because people aren't getting paid, people are losing their houses.
And the point being is that we are not looking at savings, we're looking at spending whatever we have to spend to make this system right, and we will do that. That's why we've hired people, that's why we've opened satellite offices, and that's why we are working around the clock. We have employees, public servants, who know that their fellow public servants are going without, and that is totally unacceptable.
We will be back. We appreciate you being here. There are public servants here. The Deputy Minister is here, and she will answer your questions as well. Judy Foote, Minister of Public Works, thank you for this.
It's good to be here.
The Phoenix pay system was introduced in February 2016. Since then, 80,000 federal government employees have experienced some sort of problem with their pay. The backlog now down to 10,000. Patricia.
Thank you, Graham. And the scale of the Phoenix problems is unprecedented. We have invited several federal workers to join us to tell us how it has affected them. Suzanne Baptiste is one of them. You saw her story right off the top of the show. She was talking to Kathy, and Brian is here as well. He's had some trouble in terms of getting overpaid and then trying to get the payments dealt with after the fact. And a lot of miscommunication happening there. And as well, we have Brian Preston, who is a retired civil servant. I'm sorry, John, did I call you Brian? And Chris Elward is here with the Public Service Alliance of Canada as well. It's been a tough job for them, certainly, over the last several months. We want to start with you, Suzanne, and what has been the biggest impact of what you've experienced over the last few months without a regular paycheck?
A lot of stress at home, a lot of missing money coming in. I had to get a second job to help support the family. My husband has been working longer hours as well to try to supplement the missing pay that's coming in.
And as Christmas approaches, obviously, that stress just multiplies. You have 3 children.
3 children, so it's going to be a smaller Christmas than what they're used to. But they understand. They're a little older, so they do understand the situation that we're in.
Okay. And John, we're going to get you to grab the mic just in the back there, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So you were getting overpaid for a time, and then they started taking that money back. And on that November paycheck you were telling me about, 80% of your pay was actually taken back. You were left with how much?
Just over $300 for my first pay in November. And what happened is I had received an emergency salary advance in the month of July when I returned to work. And without any communication, it was taken off my pay, split between my first pay in November and my pay of today. That's $3,200 that just disappeared for the month of December.
And your biggest issue is trying to find out when this will be rectified. Getting answers has not been easy.
It hasn't. I haven't heard anything since I became involved in Phoenix in May. And at this point, the only thing I really want to know, because it's too late to save my December right now, what's happening on my next pay, and even that I can't find out.
So you can plan ahead a little bit. And Brian, you've been watching this and kind of scratching your head the whole time. A retired public servant, but you actually worked in human resources and in the pay system, and you saw how this was all falling apart right from the beginning.
Well, 34 years gives you some perspective. The government tried on 2 previous occasions with international consulting firms, and it crashed and burned. They couldn't do it. And right now, jobs we reviewed on an interdepartmental basis over the last 15 years have gone from being a clerical job to a compensation advisory officer job. The complexities of the system, payments, collective bargainings, new things that had to be added to employees' paychecks or for their benefits especially, this has just compounded the job immensely over the years. And they try and capture that in a new system.
They got rid of some of the expertise, did not provide the proper training. Now, Chris Elward with Public Service Alliance of Canada, your job has been to try to keep people employed over the last several years. Now, in these last few months, is trying to keep those people who are employed getting properly paid. Have you been effective in helping them?
I think so. We're able to elevate and escalate some of the issues and help our members and help federal public sector workers in general to try to get those emergency salary advances that weren't very easily received in early days. We worked alongside of public service and procurement officials, along with Treasury Board officials, and we're starting to see that some of that now is getting a little bit better, but we're a long ways away from where we want to be, for sure.
Well, we really appreciate all of you coming in to share your stories today. We're going to have a chance to direct some questions at the Deputy Minister coming up on the show. Right now, back to Graham Richardson at the desk alongside our own Evan Solomon. Graham.
Thanks, Patricia. So Evan is here, and we talk about politics and who's wearing this. Of course, this is much less important than people who aren't getting paid, and we acknowledge that. But at the same time here, this was a decision by the previous government, but we're well into the next government, and this is not going away quickly. How damaging?
Well, there's a personal side, and you hear the personal stories tonight, Graham, and they're very damaging personally to the public servants. But then let's just talk on the political level. Yes, started by the Conservative government, absolutely, and they let go a lot of people. So there's fair that they inherited a mess, but it was implemented and triggered in February by the Liberal government, and this has a big political impact because you see the public servants, I've spoken to many of them, they say they've lost trust. First, they said it was going to be fixed in October. Then, now they say in February, trust is big in politics and competence. And this is no longer just about Phoenix. It's about, do you trust the government to be able to handle the big competence? And when trust and competence gets in there, it becomes a big political problem.
Through covering this story, I've learned a lot about various thousands of different pay things that the federal government has to do. But there's a simple question I was asked months ago from someone outside of the National Capital Region. Why can't they just cut them checks and fix this and then figure it out later? And I know you're hearing that kind of thing as well on the radio.
Yeah, look, this is a very complex pay system, and we all appreciate that. But nonetheless, this is what the government's supposed to do. They are the federal government. They've got a lot of employees. There's a lot of different agencies. They've got to figure that out. So they're accountable. But we talk about the politics of that. There's no quick solution here. They say it's going to be fixed in February. But now you're going to see accountability questions. You asked some to the minister. Well, now you're seeing Conservative candidates like Aaron O'Toole, who's running to be the Conservative leader. He told me today, why doesn't Justin Trudeau, Minister Foote, and Minister Bryson, the President of the Treasury Board, why don't they forego their pay until all the public servants are paid as a gesture of goodwill? So now you see the politics coming in to the process and the personal issue of the Phoenix pay system.
And if they, like all of us, are realizing, many are realizing how big this problem is and how long it's going to take to fix, because it doesn't seem like it's going to be a quick fix. Evan Solomon, appreciate you being here. Thanks so much. Patricia.
And you can listen to Evan Solomon live on Ottawa Now on News Talk 580 CFRA from 2 until 6 p.m. You can also watch Evan on Question Period Sunday mornings at 11 on CTV. Are you a federal worker affected by the Phoenix pay system problems? And do you have a question for Minister Judy Foote or Deputy Minister Marie LeMay? Perhaps you have a question about how to handle your finances. We'd love you to email us at ottawanews@ctv.ca or message us on our CTV Ottawa Facebook page. We will try to have those questions answered during our broadcasts. Now back to Graham.
Thanks, Patricia. Marie LeMay, the Deputy Minister, you are in the hot seat and you have been on this file for some time. At what point do you scrap it all, start over? Is that ever been a possibility?
Well, at this point, Graham, I think, and I don't want to minimize anything, but we've got to remember that today, 298,000 public servants got paid. So there are checks going out and there are people being paid. I'm not minimizing
That is not
this.
the whole story, and you know that, right?
So let me
I appreciate that.
So it is, you asked the minister, why aren't we fixing it? It's simple. And as she said, if it was simple, it would be fixed. This is a complex system. It's 101 departments. You're talking about 80,000 rules. You're talking about 27 collective bargaining agreements.
And
not a simple task,
and you know, I appreciate that, but you know, when someone out there who hasn't been paid and might lose their home is hearing that, they don't really care.
And that is the toughest part of the job right now, is that it's people. And it's people that are suffering from some of the implementation of Phoenix. So what we have done, and I would like to take the opportunity that you're giving me tonight to talk to public servants. If there's anybody out there that is not being paid, there is no reason why they don't get it paid. We can actually cut those checks that you were talking about. Chris said we've worked really closely with the unions. We're getting better at this every employee that is not getting a paycheck can get an emergency salary or a priority payment.
Very quickly, they don't want to touch the system if they are getting paid. There's lots of people who are avoiding the system. Phone calls are not being returned. We heard today, I haven't heard back in 4 weeks, and I've got a pay problem. That's not acceptable.
No, it's not, and that's not how it should be.
When do we get back to normal, or is this normal? Is this the way it's going to be
This is absolutely
from the government of Canada?
not normal. No,
because that's like the New York Times wrote this up.
Okay, so this is absolutely not normal. I don't think we want to go back to the before Phoenix either. There was a lot of problems with Phoenix. We want to go forward. We want to get the system right. It's going to take months before we get it right, but we will get it right. It's going to get better and better and better. We're already a lot better than we were, better position than we were in the summer. We're processing more. We can process more than we can take in. So this is a big, big step.
And some are saying it can't get worse. You will get a chance to respond to some of our questions as well from viewers. Stay with us. Our Phoenix Pay Special returns right after the break. A warning about a Phoenix fraud attempt. Public Services and Procurement Canada says some employees have received phone calls from an alleged recovery agency. The government does not use collection agencies and tells workers not to give out personal information over the phone. There are some sad examples about bankruptcies that we've heard about because of Phoenix. We're joined now by Brian Doyle. Some advice for people. Let's start with the worst of the worst. If you are facing that kind of a thing, what should people do? Should they go to the bank? Well, you've got some practical advice.
Well, come on to see Doyle Saluski. We're financial counselors. We give an hour and a half of free advice, and often people are able to circle right back around and use whatever tips we've given them to be able to help themselves for another period of time, or source some financing.
How unique is this? Because Phoenix, it's not a question where people have done anything wrong.
That's right, absolutely. But we have clients who have been whatever by Phoenix, and they're in as consumer proposals and bankruptcies at this point in time. They were at the tipping point or near the tipping point, and this has pushed them over.
So consumer proposals, meaning I need to avoid bankruptcy. I can go to various lenders, credit card companies, and make arrangements. If people don't do that, if they just let it sit, it can get worse.
It gets worse. The 21% interest rates continue to go. There's no stay of proceedings. There's no halt to any of this. Everything just accumulates and accumulates, and often there's garnishments, which become problematic because right now we've issued stays of proceedings to Phoenix, and they haven't honored them. In other words, we've issued legal documents which say you've got to lift this garnishment against this employee, and they can't do it. So we have to advise the courthouse and send the employee down to the courthouse to get his check. Otherwise, it will continue to go to the creditor. And this is, of course, not legal, but it's what's happening.
Here are some of the advice, some of the points that you say people should do dealing with Phoenix problem. Document all of the communications. Be specific about missing amounts. Calculate your interest and your penalties. Keep all documents and seek legal advice. And when you say keep all documents, you mean keep absolutely everything, even a phone call.
That's right. Document that by a memo. Just write it on a scrap of paper if you have to, but make sure you put the date, the time, and who you were talking to. And if you can reach them, because we hear that's the problem.
If you can reach, and you have clients who
we
are
have clients
because of this.
They're absolutely totally afraid because they can't get a hold of these people. And we often recommend that when they're in an insolvency process, they change their bank accounts, but they won't do that because they're afraid Phoenix will not be able to put their payroll or what part of their payroll they should be getting into that account, into any new account if they change it.
Some good advice. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
Patricia.
Well, the federal government imposed a deadline of October 31st, 2016 to resolve the Phoenix pay issues. It missed the deadline and is still working to resolve outstanding problems. And that's why we're here today. We've invited employees and their families to send in questions about the Phoenix problems. And I want to start again with Suzanne. Suzanne, it was a promotion in September, a good news story that actually initiated these problems. You never got your new rate of pay. And now you have been without pay for so long that you've actually had to take a second retail job to get by right now. A chance now for you to direct a question to the Deputy Minister. What is it you would like to ask?
I just want to know why the system was implemented, not knowing if it was ready to take on everything. Like, it's affecting families, it's affecting lives.
That. Can I ask you, you are getting money now? Because what I was talking about, the emergency salary, is really important. I don't want you to answer that, just you know that we can do it. If
I am getting that.
Okay, good, good. So the system, there was a number of tests that were done on the system, right? There was, I believe it's 16,000 different tests, that routines that were done on the system. I think in terms of that part of it, there was a lot of work done. The part where we really missed, I believe, is we didn't realize the change it would mean for the HR community, the employees. Like that part we totally underestimated. So when the system went live, you had a group of people who didn't know how to use it, but not by their fault. I mean, we hadn't done the work that we needed to do. So that means there's errors and there's not the processing capacity. So what we've been doing since the summer is building up that capacity, hiring people, going into the departments to meet with the HR folks to do some training, and be able to, we put up, with the help of the unions, the claims units and other means to be able to support employees through the transition until we do get to our steady state and we get it right.
But Brian, you think the government went about this all wrong, getting rid of that level of expertise and moving it before it was ready?
Yeah, downsizing that many experienced compensation advisors, going to a new system with inadequate training that was offered by IBM, the consultant firm, some of which was turned down by the government. No, we'll train our people. And expecting that you can take Miramichi employees and turn them into compensation advisors when it takes a few years to get a good compensation advisor. Granted, yes, under the legacy system, but why did you rush to get rid of the legacy system and move to Phoenix without solid assurances that it would actually work on implementation when you flick the switch? Also, too, can the old system be resurrected to take care of the problems now with experienced people? They're the ones that you need to bring back, because the ones I've heard that have come on a contract, they're being paid peanuts. It's insult to injury. And I know that there's staff in Miramichi that are going out on stress leave because they can't handle this.
So we've been reaching out to every compensation advisor that want to come and work for us. So we will be more than, we can take them on. So if you know anybody, please send them our way. The folks in Miramichi are working very hard. And it's true, it's actually over a year training to become a compensation advisor. So it is a complicated job. We have hired over the summer more than 200 people that were compensation advisors that had to get used to Phoenix. As you understand it, they didn't know Phoenix. So that's another training part. We did not, like I said earlier, I think the change management and the fact that we didn't have the capacity. Like if we had the compensation advisors there when we turned it on, we would have had the capacity to mitigate some of the things. We didn't have them. We had to go out and hire them. So now we have them, and we said we will keep them as long as we get to our steady state. At that point, we'll have to see how many we really need to process the pay system.
And I heard that boxes were lost in the move. Original pay files for personnel were lost in the move. Can you comment on that?
I've never heard of that.
Okay. We're actually going to hold off on that, but you're hearing that. We're trying to verify that, of course, that boxes were lost in that move to Miramichi. Just one of a series of problems that we're hearing about. Payroll workers on stress leave, perhaps easy to believe given the focus on the Phoenix pay system the last few months. We will return with some financial advice to workers coming up right after the break. And we are going to continue with some questions. We've invited employees and their families to send in questions about Phoenix problems, and we're seeing some of those come in online right now. Thank you for that. And we want to ask, just coming off that topic about some people out there being in distress in Ottawa, if you can cut checks, why are people in distress? And I want to direct that to the Deputy Minister. Should people be suffering like this at this time of year when you have the ability to cut those checks?
I feel for people that are having issues with their paycheck. What I'm saying is that, and I don't know if it's because the message is not, we don't communicate it well enough, or it took longer to get it done, but you need to know that if you're without a paycheck, you can get money from the federal government within 24 to 48 hours. You go see your manager. If that doesn't work, you go online, go to the Phoenix feedback form, you write to us, and we'll make sure that we get in touch with your department. That money can be made available. It's not the long-term solution. I'm not trying to say that's the solution, but that is absolutely available to people that need it. So the hardship cases need to be taken care of.
You say you're not sure whether you're communicating that well enough. I know John would probably say a lot is not getting communicated properly out there. That was one of the big issues for you. Why can't you get answers to these questions when you're going through a particularly difficult time in your life?
Exactly. I was on leave when we converted to Phoenix, so that was one strike against me. It took me a while to get back onto the payroll. It took me a couple of months. I received an emergency salary advance in July. Things seemed to stabilize. My checks started to go down, I thought, deduction of recovery of overpayment. I hit my November check, and they took half of the salary advance away in my first, my November 30th check, and the other half on today's check. So over 80% of my take-home pay was gone in 2 pays, and I had no idea this was coming. I've tried to speak to people. The person I spoke to in Miramichi said they had no record of the overpayment. My former department, IRCC, said Miramichi does all this. So I can't get information anywhere.
So I'm sorry that it's happening this way for you. I'll tell you how it's supposed to happen. Like when we do get the emergency checks to the employees, once they get back on the payroll and things are going, at that point, we will go get it back. Because an emergency check is supposed to represent your net that you take home. So once you get back in the system, we will go take it back. Obviously, it didn't happen the correct way for you, but and I apologize for that. But overpayments, that's a different thing. There's some people that have been overpaid, and working with the unions again, what we've agreed to do is that we would actually get the money back on a certain amount of different pay period, depending on what people want. We will entertain with them what's the best way to be able to get that money back.
But without communicating, I have no idea how much of an overpayment. Just when I left to go on leave, there was an overpayment issue. So, but in 6 months, no one has been able to provide me with this information. And like right now, I just want to know what's happening on my next pay.
All right, we have other questions coming in. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to all of them, but we want to ask this. I have been underpaid since April 1st, 2016 after a promotion. Tonight on the news, it was said that people underpaid this year would be reflected on the 2017 T4. Does it mean that I will be taxed more because I was supposed to get that money last year?
So for people that are underpaid, the money that you will get in 2017 will be the money that you will get in 2017. So depending on your tax brackets. And at that point, then there's possibilities to hire accountants, look at what the impact is. We have at Treasury Board, our colleagues at Treasury Board have set up a claims unit, and that's why it's so important, as you said, to keep all the pieces of paper, all of the information, because there is a way to recuperate. Again, I give credit to the unions on this, because there was a lot of work done on this with them to set this up so that employees could actually be compensated for some of the fees that they are suffering.
Ms. LeMay, we have to go to break. One quick question. Have you long-term public servant, have you ever been seen something like this? Like, this is all-consuming for the top levels of public service. Have you ever seen something like this? Because I certainly think it's incredibly unique, and it must be incredibly frustrating.
You know, Graham, I don't know that there's actually been a project like that in government. We're talking about one common system to 101 different departments and agencies, 300,000 employees. We said it before, 27 bargaining agreements, 80,000 rules. I don't know that there's been such a thing. So no, I have not, and I don't think that there's been a lot of my colleagues. But the thing that is very important is we are working extremely hard to address the issues. Right now, the biggest issue we have is that we're actually processing the requests slower. So there are issues with errors, and there's still that. I don't want to minimize that. But the processing time, because we have to catch up, because this summer we weren't able to process as quickly as possible, has created that.
And you say you will catch up.
We will.
You have to.
We will. We will.
And if you take nothing else away from tonight's broadcast, document everything.